Yo, what is up, guys? So, I am Children Science and I will be reporting for the lesson 10, which is the Southeast Asian Englishes, together with my group mates, which are Pierre Pitogo, Roland Sakal, Viana Marie Santillan, Albia Tubat, Andrea Visitacion, Aslea Wahab, and Lawrence Zanoria.
So, for the contents of the report, here is what you'll find in this report. First will be the introduction, followed by historical background, status and function of English, sociolinguistic profile, then characteristics of Southeast Asian Englishes, followed by phonology, vocabulary, grammar, discourse, and lastly, conclusion. So English plays a major role in many spheres of life in Southeast Asia, including those that involve academic, diplomatic, and economic pursuits. However, the Southeast Asian region presents a more diverse picture as compared to South Asia, in that some parts of it have institutionalized English. But first, let us go back in time. So English was introduced as a result of colonialism in all the Southeast Asian countries except Thailand, which was never a colony of any European power. Nevertheless, each country in the region presents a slightly different profile. The colonial history of peninsular Malaysia begins with the acquisition of Penang by the East India Company in 1786. Subsequently, Stanford Raffles established a trading settlement in Singapore on behalf of the company in 1819, and the Straits Settlements became established by 1826. Education in English was introduced into the Straits Settlements from the early 19th century, but the British experience in India, where the spread of English education led to the rise of nationalism, it resulted in the British being cautious in introducing English education widely in Malaysia. The policy resulted in four types of schools: Chinese in the Chinese majority regions, traditional Arabic for religious instruction only, and Malay schools in the Malay areas, Tamil in the South Asian majority areas, and English medium schools for the rich and the elite of the Malaysian society. After independence, Malay or Bahasa Malaysia emerged as the national language of the new nation. And so, according to the National Education Policy implemented in 1982, and Malay is taught obligatorily in national-type primary schools. At the secondary level, all schools employ Malay as the medium of instruction so that all students completing high school can move to the university level. Ethnic language schools are required to provide for instruction in pupils' own languages, also, which is consisting of Chinese, Tamil, and many more. English is taught obligatorily in all schools. At independence in 1965, Singapore adopted a policy of education in which all four official languages, English, Malay, Mandarin, and Tamil, were given equal status in the education system. All four were used as media of education at the primary and secondary levels. In addition, all four languages were made available as second languages in all schools. In 1521, Magellan led a Spanish expedition to make the official European discovery of the archipelago that was later named the Philippines. This laid the foundation of European colonization of the Philippines. Spain's conquest of the Philippines was followed by 400 years of Spanish rule. The majority of native people became landless peasants and sharecroppers, while the Catholic Church owned vast tracts of land and controlled the education system. An independence movement against the Spanish rule, started in 1896 by the Filipinos, finally resulted in American intervention, culminating in the defeat of the Spanish at the hands of the American forces in 1898. Thus began the American colonization of the Philippines. There was resistance to occupation, but after a prolonged war between the American forces and the Philippines, which is from 1899 to 1902, U.S. rule was established. The first person to think of English rather than Spanish as the medium of instruction in schools in the Philippines was Apolinario Mabini. During the 19th century, in 1901, English became the sole medium of instruction. Thomasite English teachers came from the USA, and by 1921, about 2,000 English teachers from the USA had come and gone. Initially, Americans constituted a third of the English teachers, but by 1921, they represented only 9%, so it is safe to say that from the beginning, most Filipinos learned English from other Filipinos. In 1901, nobody in the Philippines spoke English. In the 1918 census, about 47.3% of Filipinos above 10 years of age were reported to be able to speak English, and 55.6% able to read and write it. Filipino and English were declared official languages of the Philippines in 1973 in the Second Constitution, as opposed to Spanish and English in the First Constitution. In 1935, English, however, was the language of the public schools and is the de facto national language of business, commerce, law, and government, and often of the mass media and popular entertainment. The Presidential Commission on Education Reform recommendation on making more options available for the medium of instruction for the first grade allows for more flexibility in adopting English or Filipino as a medium, and for adopting regional languages as media in grade 1 with Filipino and English as subjects. Indonesia was a colony of the Netherlands for 4 centuries before it declared its independence in 1945. During the colonial period, Dutch was the main language of education, but for practical reasons, since the Netherlands was a small country surrounded by powerful countries such as Britain, France, and Germany, English, French, and German were also taught at the high school level. European-style education, however, was confined to a small minority of Indonesians, so that the people of the 16,000 islands, speaking more than 500 languages, had no common language. Malay as the lingua franca in the domain of commerce was used widely in Southeast Asia. Though only about 10 million Indonesians were familiar with Malay, it was known all over the islands, as opposed to Javanese, which has more numerous speakers as a first language, but it is confined to Java. Thailand was the only country in Southeast Asia that escaped colonization by the Europeans. King Rama IV, which ruled between 1851 to 68, it concluded treaties with European countries, mostly in the form of a treaty of friendship and commerce, thus avoiding colonization and establishing modern Thailand. He made many social and economic reforms during his reign, since English became the lingua franca of the Far East. Rama IV realized that the kind of education provided by the monasteries in the court was not adequate for producing future government officials. He therefore commanded that measures be taken to modernize the education of the country. Accordingly, a good knowledge of English formed a part of the new educational requirements for the officials, as it had become a necessary key to further knowledge and a medium of communication with foreigners. English was introduced into the public school curriculum in 1913, and it remained a required subject until 1977, with instruction in the language beginning in the 5th school year. Since then, several policy revisions have taken place. The latest one introduces English at the lower primary level and continues instruction through the completion of the high school.
And now for the status and function of English. Starting with the first country, Malaysia. As Mahaji Umar describes the multilingual situation in Malaysia in terms of the 3 layers of multilinguality in the country. The primary layer consists of Austronesian languages, which consists of Malay, and the languages of Sabah and Sarawak, and the Austroasiatic languages of the Aborigines of Malaysia. So there are 19 such groups in Malaysia. The secondary layer consists of Germanic and Romance, Indo-Aryan, Dravidian, Sino-Tibetan, and Austronesian. As Mahaji Umar goes on to characterize the multilingual situation in terms of a batik pattern. The batik is a basic motif which is surrounded by secondary ones. In batik printing, the first to appear on the white cloth is the basic motif, then come the secondary ones. Batik patterns get modified over the ages. Certain motifs get bigger and others smaller. Certain motifs run through the space provided by the cloth, while others are confined to certain corners only. The new education policy designates English the second most important language after Bahasa Malaysia, and resulted in a great impact of English on academic life. All university students take English as a requirement for graduation. University of Malaya students have to take 8 credits of English, 4 for general English and 4 for English for specific purposes. There is freedom of choice for the language used for writing dissertations. However, the statistics for the years 1995 to 97 show that over 2/3 of MA and PhD dissertations were written in English. Only in Islamic studies, the Faculty of Arts in the Social Sciences and the Faculty of Education were a majority of dissertations written in the national language, Bahasa Malaysia. And now let us go to the Philippines. In the Philippines, English replaced Spanish as the official language with the establishment of the American rule. English continued to be the official language of the schools and government after the Philippines gained independence from the USA in July 1946, along with the teaching of the national language in colleges of education for future teachers and at each grade level beginning in grade 1. According to Gonzalez, between 1939 to 1980, the number of speakers of English grew from 26.6% to 64.5%. Since the 1990 consensus did not include information on the number of speakers of English, the Linguistic Society of the Philippines conducted a study and reported on the basis of a sample of 1,200 respondents that 56% of Filipinos are able to speak English, 73% are able to read, and 59% are able to write it. And now let us go to the Indonesia. Indonesia proclaimed itself independent from 4 centuries of Dutch rule on August 17, 1945, but gained recognition as an independent nation only in December 1949. During the colonial period, Dutch was the official language, which at independence was replaced by Bahasa Indonesia. Instead of Dutch, English became the second most important language in the school curriculum at the high school level. And for the sociolinguistic profile, as English becomes the language of school in higher education and plays a dominant role in the professions and the economic life of the nations of Southeast Asia, its social roles undergo a change too, even though the perception of English remains that of a foreign language in multilingual and ethnically plural countries such as Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand. It is gradually becoming the language of social interaction, as it does not carry the load of the social-linguistic connotations of the indigenous languages. Example of this is 2 Malay teachers cited in chapter 19. The Malay items in the conversation have the following meaning: a particle or a particle, pan also, makan food, to eat, susah difficult, la a particle, conveying various effective meanings, used in Malaysia and Singapore in informal context to show solidarity among interactants. Karipap's English item, assimilated to the sound system of Malay. Also note the grammatical differences. Lack of inversion in the question, like where on earth you went you were makaning where. Use of sentence fragments. No sign till 1 o'clock, so susawan. Lack of subject. Just nibbled, so not really hungry. Got plenty of, so not bad. Also the use of one, so susawan. This is not the colloquial or standard variety that Malaysians would use on formal occasions, but this mesolectal or colloquial variety serves the purpose of establishing a shared social space in non-formal domains. And now for the characteristics of Southeast Asian Englishes. The grammatical characteristics of Southeast Asian Englishes have been described in a number of publications, including those by Bautista, Kriwe, Gonzalez, Liamzin, Platt and Weber, Sad and Nung, Tai, and Tong, in addition to scores of unpublished papers. And for the characteristics of Malaysian English, Zoraida Modon reports that most of the contrasts in vowel sounds of British English are lost in Malaysian English. So Malaysian English does not maintain the contrast between tense and lacks vowel sounds. That's why the following pairs are pronounced similarly. The second vowel sound in words such as forward and the vowel in bird are both pronounced with R. The diphthongs are simplified so that make is pronounced with E and coat with O. Vowel reduction is unstressed, syllables is absent, and nouns and verbs are not distinguished by the placement of stress, and as in BRE or AME. Vowel reduction is unstressed, syllables is absent, And nouns and verbs are not distinguished by the placement of stress, as in bre or ame, import versus import, a syllabic words that initial syllable is stressed. The shared phonological features of outer and expanding circle Englishes in Asia are the following, also with some regions such as Africa. The shared phonological features of outer and expanding circle Englishes in Asia are the following. First, lack of tense and lacks contrast in high front and back vowels in some varieties or sub-varieties. Second, substitution of simple vowels for diphthongs and lack of reduction of vowels is in stressed syllables. Properties of mid vowels and low vowels may differ from variety to variety. Properties of mid vowels and low vowels may differ from variety to variety, but the contrasts are usually maintained. Consonants lack of aspiration in initial plosive or stops. Substitution of alveolar, lack of distinction between sibilants. Substitution of labiodental with labial and interdental fricatives by stops or sibilants. So is the substitution of W and V by either W or labiodental continuant V. Some Southeast Asian varieties exhibit merging of R and L in non-initial position, and some simplify final consonant clusters. Rhythmic features of Southeast Asian Englishes are very different from those of inner circle Englishes. First, word stress is not distinctive. It does not distinguish between nouns and verbs, example, excuse and excuse, or between compounds in phrases. Second, sentence stress also shows characteristics different from inner circle Englishes, which may lead to difficulties in communicating across varieties. Ultimately, the charges were dropped after expert testimony from a linguist. And now for the vocabulary. Similar to their East Asian and South Asian counterparts, Southeast Asian Englishes also have lexical resources that extend the range of the American or British English of their historical inheritance. These fall into several categories such as neologisms, borrowing, new compounds, and etc. Examples include Singaporean English, axi, which means show off, missy, nurse, chop, rubber stamp, marina kids, which means youngsters who spend their leisure time at or around Marina Square, which is a shopping center. Graduate or well-educated married women encouraged to have more children and accorded certain privileges in Singapore as compared to non-graduate mothers. In Philippine English, deep, heuristic, or hard to understand as an attribute of language. Examples are stick, cigarette, high blood, tense or upset, blowout, treating someone with a snack or meal, motel, a hotel used for premarital or extramarital affairs, manualize, to prepare manuals, go ahead, leave before others with host permission, studentry or a student body, amboy, a Filipino perceived to be too pro-American, promdi, from the province, behest loan, unguaranteed bank loan given to presidential cronies, pulot boy, or a boy who picks up tennis balls in a game, balikbayan box, or a box in which Filipinos returning from abroad put all their shopping, bed spacer, anyone who stays in a dormitory or shared room in a boarding house but does not take meals there, comfort room, a room equipped with a toilet, washing facilities, or etc. Fiscal, an official having the function of a public prosecutor. Watch your car, an unlicensed attendant who guards and sometimes cleans parked cars in returns for tips. Malaysian English, antilog, a male hated by a girl. Popcorn, a loquacious person. Kacang, or peanuts, easy. Slambar, or relax. Red spot, or open shelf, which are girls who are popular and those who are not. Daybugs, those who come to attend school but do not live in residential halls. The borrowings from local languages make English more relevant to local contexts. They also serve ideological purposes. For instance, Towenberg discusses how Malay elites are institutionalizing their dominance through English, which is the native language of very few Malaysians, but is still the principal code for communication among Malaysia's multi-ethnic elites by utilizing the linguistic device of replacing English words with denotatively equivalent terms from Malay, resulting in what Klein has termed the covert expression of racism in the institutionalization of inequality. The following advertisement and news item make a clear distinction between Malay citizens based on their ethnic origin and privileges, Malays or Bumi Putera, over those of Chinese or Indian origin. Office coordinator wanted, varsity college graduate, male or female, Bumi Putera, sociable, able to mix well with people, fluent English. Foreign ownership decreased from 61.7% to 25.5%, while non-Bumi Puteras increased from 34% to 56.7%. Even innocuous English compounds such as Chinese educated and English educated may bear a great deal of baggage in a specific content. Ho discusses how the terms designate two separate groups of people in Singapore, the former in the majority and politically more active, the latter a minority and less political. Opinions exchanged in newspapers indicate that the two terms have a divisive effect on the society. Similar observations can be made about compounds such as communal dining and intercaste marriage in South Asian English. And now let us proceed to the grammar. Southeast Asian Englishes share many characteristics of other outer and expanding circle Englishes in their grammars. Some of the salient features are listed here. So below these are the many examples. Verbs tenses are not marked consistently on most Southeast Asian Englishes. Southeast Asian languages mark aspects rather than tenses. So adverbs may be used to mark tenses, as in the following narrative. Her fiancé at the time brought over some canned ribs, pork ribs, yes, about 28 of cans of them, and then we returned about 14 of them. He came over with a basket of fruits, which we retain half and return the other. Here, the tenses of brought over versus return and came over versus retain vary, where the speaker first uses the past and then the noun past in the very next clause. See also A for the use of then or after that in Vietnamese English. Many Southeast Asian languages do not have a copula construction comparable to she is a student or he is tall. Simple juxtaposition of the subject and the complement yields the meaning of identification or attribution. This feature is attested in Southeast Asian Englishes, and below are the examples. So reduplication is common in all Southeast Asian Englishes and may be used to indicate the following meanings. Adjectives that are at the extreme ends of a scale do not co-occur with intensifiers in many varieties of English. In some Southeast Asian varieties, however, expressions such as very huge and more immense are not uncommon. Many other features shared with the outer and expanding circle Englishes, such as reversal of the word order of the object and adverb in sentences, reversal of subject and verb in embedded questions, coordination of clauses in different moods, distinctive usage patterns of prepositions have also been described as part of Philippine English. Discourse. Southeast Asian Englishes have certain distinct conventions of language use, some of which have been discussed in literature. Here are a few examples. First, the terms of address. The convention in Southeast Asia, as in East Asia, is to use a title in the given name of the person to address the interlocutor. Therefore, someone named Susan M. Lightfoot can usually expect to be addressed as Miss Susan. Second, casual conversation. Topics which are off limits in inner circle casual conversations may not be so in Southeast Asian English. Questions about one's salary, age, weight, marital status, number of children, cost of personal items, and rent of one's apartment are considered polite as they indicate that the speaker is genuinely interested in the addressee. Third, code mixing and code switching, used as a common strategy used in communication. Locals switch from English to their local language due to various reasons. Some are listed below. Fourth, figures of speech, similes, metaphors, and so on, drawn from local context. For the Malay sub-ecosystem alone, we would have to list the hikayats, syairs, matras, pantuns, keronkong, wayang kulit, makyong, menora, bangsawan, and these. Southeast Asia, where traditions of indigenous languages mingle with Chinese, Sanskrit, and Tamil traditions to create a tapestry of many colors and hues. Southeast Asian writers are aware of their physical and socio-cultural context and how these affect creativity in English. Martin cites the Filipino writer and critic Casiano Calalang, who in his essay on storytelling says, "It will profit us to pay particular attention to our surroundings, to the peculiarities that make them different from others, to the atmosphere of our villages, which cannot be confounded with the metropolitanism of the cities, and when in our mind the differences are clear, let us start with enthusiasm and vigor to write stories that will breathe the heat and passion of the tropics and bear the distinctive stamp Filipino." And now for the conclusion. Just as in South Asia, there is a tradition of literary creativity in Southeast Asian countries also. This is